One of Elizabeth I's favourites, Robert Devereux, during the Tudor period would fall spectacularly from grace. He was a prominent member of the Queen's court, however would be executed inside the walls of the Tower of London in brutal fashion for treason. He was a leading nobleman and courtier who impressed the Queen with his lively mind and eloquence. However, ultimately he would lose his head for his role in a sinister plot to rebel against her leadership. Today we look at the brutal execution of Robert Devereux and the rebellion that led to his death. Remember to support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Robert Devereux was born on the 10th of November 1565 and was born into a rather noble family. His great-grandmother was Mary Boleyn, sister of Anne Boleyn, the mother of Queen Elizabeth I, and he was a first cousin twice removed of the Queen. His father died in 1576, and at a young age he became the Earl of Essex. He studied at Trinity College in Cambridge, and then later Essex's mother, Lettice Knollys, married Robert Dudley, the Earl of Leicester. Now this marriage caused a few issues for the Queen, as Elizabeth I and Robert Dudley were very close, and Dudley was a long-standing favourite and romantic interest of the Queen. Because of this, the Queen was fuming with Lettice Knollys, and when the Queen learned about her marriage to Robert Dudley, she was banished from court. Robert Devereux, the Earl of Essex, then performed military service under his stepfather Robert Dudley in the Netherlands before he entered the court and won the favour of the Queen. He first came to court in 1584 and had solidified himself as a favourite of the Queen by 1587. She appreciated his wit and knowledge, as well as his many other skills. It was said that Elizabeth was captivated within a few weeks by his wit and high spirits, and she became besotted with him. They soon apparently were inseparable. One of his servants recorded that Elizabeth let no one near her but my Lord of Essex, and at night my lord is at cards or one game or another with her, that he cometh not to his own lodgings till the birds sing in the morning. Elizabeth, now getting older, also demanded Devereux's constant attendance, and would dance with no one else but him, insisting they also went hunting together. They were very close at a time, and she clearly liked him. Despite the huge over 30-year age gap, she was clearly attracted to the younger man with dark eyes and auburn hair. This relationship caused issues at court, including with his main rival, Sir Walter Raleigh. In June 1587, Robert replaced his stepfather as the Master of the Horse, and he later benefited financially from his stepfather's death, with the Queen giving Robert Dudley's royal monopoly on sweet wines to Devereux. This made him a substantial profit on taxes. In 1589, he was part of Sir Francis Drake's English Armada, which sailed to Spain to establish English military supremacy, however this was unsuccessful. In 1590 he married Frances Walsingham, the daughter of Sir Francis Walsingham, and he had a number of children with her. This high-profile marriage was kept a secret from the Queen, and he continued his work in the military throughout the 1590s. He impressed with the capture of Cadiz in 1596, but annoyed the Queen after he defied her orders a number of times. He had it all really, money, power and influence, however his biggest failing was when he acted as a Lord Lieutenant of Ireland. He had talked himself into the title, and at the time the 9 Years' War was in full swing, and no English commander had been successful. Robert Devereux, the Earl of Essex, led the largest force that was ever sent to Ireland, consisting of around 16,000 soldiers, and they were ordered to end the rebellion that was going on. He initially left London with much pomp and ceremony, with the intention of instantly crushing the rebellion, but this didn't really happen. He had convinced the Privy Council that he would confront rebel leader Hugh O'Neill, the Earl of Tyrone, in Ulster. He took his army into the south of Ireland and fought a number of pointless battles, wasted money and failed to establish his presence. He also failed to defeat the Irish in a number of important encounters and entered an embarrassing truce with the rebels, which was considered humiliating to the Queen. He returned to England, setting sail in September 1599. The Queen had forbidden his return and was surprised when he entered her bedchamber at Nonsuch Palace, even when the Queen wasn't properly dressed. He met the Privy Council 3 times that day, and he assumed that his disobedience had gone unpunished. Essex then appeared in front of the Privy Council on the 29th of September, and it was deemed that his actions in Ireland were unacceptable, and him leaving the country and signing the truce with the rebel leader was considered indefensible and treated as desertion. He was then held inside York House under house arrest, and as time went on some support was growing for Robert Devereux, the Earl of Essex. Some considered his return to have been necessary, but others considered his activity in Ireland as a crime. He was tried in front of a commission of 18 men and was confronted with a number of charges and pieces of evidence, and Essex was convicted and sent back to house arrest, being banned from having any visitors. However, it was under his rebellion that he would gain a rather notorious reputation as a traitor that would lead to his execution. The Earl's residence in London, Essex House, began to become a focal point for people who were aggrieved with the Queen and her government. On the 3rd of February 1601, 5 conspiracy leaders met at Drury House, where the Earl of Southampton was living. Robert Devereux himself was not present in an attempt to not arouse suspicion, and the group discussed his ideas on taking control of court, the Tower of London and the City of London. Their goal was to storm the city, take control and force the Queen to change the leaders of her government, in particular focusing on Robert Cecil. The rebels were even content on doing damage to the people of London to make a statement. The Earl of Essex and his followers planned the uprising, and on the 8th of February 1601 they rode out of Essex House with a party of nobles and gentlemen and entered the City of London in an attempt to force an audience with the Queen. Devereux captured 4 messengers and kept them hostage, and their arrival was timed to clash with a sermon at Paul's Cross, as they expected the Lord's Mayor to be there. At the time, Robert Cecil sent a warning to the Mayor, classing Devereux as a traitor. Many of his followers then deserted him because of this, fearing the repercussions of helping a traitor. At this point his position was under pressure, and Devereux returned to Essex House, but when he arrived the hostages had gone. The Queen's men then besieged the house, and then in the evening Devereux surrendered after burning evidence, with him being placed under arrest. Less than 2 weeks after the rebellion, Robert Devereux was tried for treason, and the trial only lasted a day before a guilty verdict was passed. It was obvious that he was going to pay for his involvement with his life, even though he had burned evidence. Devereux had lost all of the Queen's support, and he was sentenced to die a traitor's death, being hanged, drawn and quartered. Elizabeth, in one final act of mercy, would commute this to a simple beheading, probably due to the kindness that he had showed her in the past, and Devereux's death sentence was signed on the 20th of February 1601. He was imprisoned inside the Tower of London to await his execution. In the early hours of the 25th of February, he was attended on by 3 priests and walked to his execution with 16 guards and a lieutenant of the Tower. His execution was held inside the Tower of London rather than outside the walls of the Tower on Tower Hill. This is most probably due to the fact that it was of very noble blood, but also because of the authorities were worried that remnants of the rebellion and supporters of Devereux could cause more trouble. Because of his status and rank, he would die within the same walls as Anne Boleyn, Catherine Howard and Lady Jane Grey. He had begged to be executed privately and not in front of a mob, but this request was finally granted. His execution was not a straightforward one. A scaffold had been erected inside Caesar's Tower, one of the towers inside the fortification, and when he arrived on the scaffold, it would be executioner Thomas Derrick who completed the job. Previously, Derrick had been convicted of rape, but was pardoned by Devereux himself, clearing him of the death penalty on the basis that he would become an executioner. Derrick would go on to execute more than 3,000 people in his career, but he would make a mess of his pardoners, the Earl of Essex. Robert Devereux on the scaffold made a short speech admitting his treason and sins against the Crown and the Queen, and he also spoke of his pride and selfish vanity. He insisted that he had never intended harm on the Queen, and he wished her a long and prosperous reign. When Devereux had his head on the block, Thomas Derrick would stand over him with the sharp axe, ready to take his life. It was reported to have taken 3 strokes of the axe to behead Devereux, in an incredibly bloody sight. He died a man who admitted his sins were more in number than the hairs on his head. Queen Elizabeth was notified of his death and was rather silent for a few minutes before resuming playing music. Her intensely close relationship with the Earl of Essex was a long departure from the last few events of Devereux's life, in which he tried to create a rebellion against the City of London. Robert Devereux, the Earl of Essex, was the last favourite of Queen Elizabeth I. However, like many people who got close to the Tudor monarchs, they eventually met their end quite brutally. He was clearly in a strong position within the Queen's court, but his dealings in Ireland greatly cost him respect, his position and favour in the eye of Elizabeth. He died inevitably a traitor, intent on causing chaos in the capital, and his execution was, despite being botched, a clear indication of the Queen's power. Once again, thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.